In this video, we're going to explore how the Nikon D700 and the Canon 5D Mark II do different skin tones. Okay, I've got multiple nationalities and lighting scenarios, okay, in this video. So we're going to take a deeper dive into how each camera handles that situation, okay? The Canon, I have a 100mm lens, and the Nikon, I have an 85mm lens. And if you just do a crop, they're very, very similar. The 85 and the 100 are very similar. In all the photos, the color mode was set to portrait. I wanted to make sure the camera knew there's a person in front of the camera. Now, what's important is that I shot in JPEG and RAW. Okay, people seem to want to see the RAW, and of course I want to see the JPEG because I want to see how the camera does without having to go into Photoshop or a photo editor. Okay, what does it look like fresh out of camera? Because not everyone wants to edit their photographs. So if you don't want to edit your photographs, what do they look like in JPEG? That to me is important information. Okay, I'm going to show you the RAW, then the JPEG fresh out of camera. Then I'm going to show you Adobe Photoshop Camera Raw set to auto. Okay, if you open up a photo in Photoshop Camera Raw and just click the auto button and then set the color mode to portrait, that's what I've got. I didn't like any of those, but I'm including them. And then I did my own personal preference. I basically took the Photoshop Camera Raw Auto and I lowered the saturation because I think the Photoshop Camera Raw generally is oversaturated for portraits. First up, the raw image. You can see immediately the Canon is slightly darker than the Nikon. I apologize for the motion blur on the Canon side. And you can see the Canon had a slower shutter speed. Difficult to hold the camera still at that slower shutter speed. Next up, the JPEG. Now this is what the camera will produce with no editing. And you can see that the Canon is cooler and the Nikon is warmer. You can also see that the Canon brightened up the image and the Nikon side darkened the image slightly. Now this is the Photoshop version. I don't like either. They're both too dark. They're both too saturated. Now mine, I brightened them, you can see, and I evened out the saturation, and the two images look very, very similar. That's just my opinion, and you can decide which one you prefer. Okay, next image up. Nikon is brighter in RAW. The Canon is darker in RAW. We look at the JPEG, and both camera companies seem to even it out a little bit, and you can see, similar to the last one, the Canon side is cooler and the Nikon side is warmer. The Nikon side seems to have slightly less contrast than the Canon side. To the Photoshop Auto, and you can see the Nikon side is especially oversaturated compared to the Canon side. The Canon side is a little bit too dark. If we go over to mine, I've brightened them both up evenly, and I've evened out the saturation and the color tones, and they appear to be very, very similar. My preference, and you can obviously choose whatever you like as far as if you like one better than the other. Okay, some outdoor portraits. Here the sun is out, backlit with the bright sun behind her, and you can see, again, the RAW version. The Nikon is brighter. Canon is darker, and then we go to the JPEG. It looks like the Nikon darkens up a little bit and the Canon gets ever so slightly brighter. Moving on to the Photoshop Auto mode, both are oversaturated in my opinion. My version, I brightened them up, reduced the saturation and contrast a bit. Now they both look almost identical. I'll let you decide which one you like. Okay, we're still outside. The sun has gone behind a cloud, so it's heavy backlighting. The Nikon is darker. The Canon is brighter. I really like the Canon in this situation, the RAW. Anyway, moving on, the JPEG, the Canon just gets a little bit darker and the Nikon gets a little bit brighter. There's not much else to say here. The Photoshop Automatic, both are a little bit too dark, a little too saturated. Then my version, I brightened them both up quite a bit. I think with this heavy backlighting, I prefer the overly bright image to really bring out the facial skin tones. This flash photo is amazing. They're almost identical. The skin tones are identical. The hair tones are identical. In controlled lighting situations, these two photos look almost identical. Moving to the JPEG, the Canon JPEG is almost the same as the Canon RAW. But the Nikon JPEG clearly makes a difference. You can see the Nikon reduces the contrast and the saturation a little bit. Okay, the Photoshop portrait, again, these two images look the same. You could barely tell the difference on these two images. If you go to my edit, I've reduced the saturation on both. Really easy to do, not a lot of work here. The raw images here look incredibly similar. Notice I set the white balance to flash You'll notice the color temperature of the two images is slightly different. Each camera company handles their flash setting differently, but the results are the same. Moving to the JPEG, the Nikon reduces the contrast and the saturation a little bit, and the Canon keeps it almost the same. So that seems to be typical. Moving on to the Adobe Photoshop Camera Raw set to auto. These aren't too bad. They're a little oversaturated, but they're not too bad. Okay, now switching over to mine. I like them so much I didn't do much changing. I reduced the saturation just a small amount. I felt that they were pretty good as they were. And you can look at these two photographs. You'll never know the difference between Canon and Nikon. The skin tones are basically the same. The hair tone is basically the same. So not a lot of difference in these two photographs. Now you can sort of tell that in some of the images, the Nikon looks a little bit better, and some of the images, the Canon looks a little bit better. There's no real winner here. I think it's just your personal preference. Okay. I was surprised at how many of the Canon I liked better than the Nikon. I think in the last video, I preferred the Nikon over the Canon, even though the Nikon knows when there's a person in front of the camera, because you could see the differences in the original JPEG images that came out of camera. Okay. But thanks for watching, and please click the like and subscribe button to help support this channel. Now get your favorite camera, Nikon or Canon, and get out there and shoot some pictures of your kids, your grandkids, your wife, your best friends, your whoever you take pictures of. So enjoy.